yet another very interesting lesson on expressions with what. Well, what is one of the most common WH question, right? But you can't always use a what in order to ask a question, because sometimes using it in a phrase can mean something totally different. Of course, it is a question, but there are various ways you can use it in expressions and phrases that you are now commonly going to use when you speak English. I've got a few expressions for you. The first one I've got is, what's the catch? Well, what does this expression really mean? Now, sometimes you are told things, or people try to sell you things for prices that seem to be too good to be true. So when something that you are told, or you are sold rather, sounds too good to be true, that's when you will ask, what's the catch? Nowadays, a lot of people sell a lot of internet packages, for phones at very cheap prices. And they tell you that, look, for £10, you are going to get unlimited internet with unlimited minutes. Now, that sounds like a very good deal, but perhaps there is some kind of an underlying problem. There is something that you are not quite aware of as far as that deal is concerned. So you may ask, what's the catch? Because maybe the unlimited internet that you are sold is not really unlimited. It could come with speed restrictions. It could come with a cap after using a certain amount. So the deal is not as good as you think it is. So therefore, the deal is too good to be true. That's when you say, what's the catch? In response to something that you feel is not quite right, okay? Now, moving on to the next expression, we have a question, which is, what's the drill? So sometimes when you are introduced to something, you want to know the rules and procedures pertaining to whatever it is that you are introduced to, right? So say, for example, you are new to a company and you speak with some of the fellow employees, and you want to know what are the rules and procedures to go about getting leaves, getting your holidays in place. So you can ask, what's the drill? In other words, you are saying, or you are asking, what are the rules and procedures to go about doing something? It could be anything, okay? And then we have another very, very common expression, okay? It's a question that says, what do you say? Now, let me tell you, when you say it fast in spoken English, it sounds more like, what do you say? So, when you're actually talking, this is the way it's going to be pronounced, okay? So you say, what do you say? So when do you use this question or this expression, what do you say? You use it when you are asking for someone's opinion, their decision, or what they feel about something. Okay, so when you want to know about someone's decision, so you tell your friend, we'll watch a movie, go for lunch, and then we'll hang around at my place. What do you say? So you want to know whether your friend thinks that it's a good idea or not. So you want to know your friend's decision about whether we should do whatever it is that I have planned out. So that's what you say. You say, what do you say? Okay, that's the way you actually pronounce it when you're talking in spoken English. Now, the next expression is again a very common one. It says, what goes around comes around. Okay, so this is another quote or another way of saying that whatever you do comes back to you. You know, as children, we were always taught that if you did good, good things would happen to you. If you were bad, you know, bad things would probably happen to you, right? So what goes around comes around is just another way of saying that whatever you do comes back to you. So you better be a little bit good. Okay, and the next question or an expression using what is what do I owe you? Okay, now this is something or a question that you use when, or is another way of saying what is the amount that I have to pay. So, you know, maybe you are in a bar and you've ordered a drink and you ask the bartender, so what do I owe you? Or what do I pay? What is the amount I have to pay? A more informal way of saying that is, what's the damage? That's what people normally use these days. So what do I owe you is just another way of saying, what is the amount that I require to pay? Okay. And this is, again, a very common expression which says, what's eating her? How can something eat a person? Well, this is an expression that you use when you are trying to ask what's bothering someone. So what's eating her is another way of saying what's bothering her. Okay, so you can see, you know, your friend, she's quite upset, she's probably crying, she's angry, you know, she's not feeling very good. And you and your friend are talking about that friend who is upset. So that's when you say, what's eating her? What's bothering her? Why is she so angry? Why is she so sad and upset and angry? So that's another way of just saying what's bothering or what's kind of causing her some kind of problem. Okay? And the next expression is, what are you getting at? Now, let me tell you, there are some people who keep talking in circles. What does that mean? You know, they kind of talk about everything but the actual point that they are trying to make. So when you have someone like that and you want them to just stop and you want to ask them, what is your point? That's another way of saying, what are you getting at? Okay, so what are you getting at is another way of saying, what's the point? Or what's the point you are trying to make? Okay, so when someone keeps talking about probably everything in the world and you want them to come straight to the point, that's when you will just stop them and say, wait, what are you getting at? In other words, you say, what is your point? What is the point you are trying to make? Okay, now the next expression with the word what is, what's done is done. This is a very final statement which actually goes to show or goes to say that the past cannot be changed. You know, so your mother keeps, complaining about the expenses that you've incurred by going into a hotel, which is a little bit more expensive than you thought you would have had to pay for. So you get a little fed up and you're saying that, okay, what's done is done. The past cannot be changed. So we don't go over that again and again and again, right? Because what's done is done, okay? We can't change that anymore. And moving on to the last expression with this very common word is a question that says, what's with or what's the deal with? Now, each of these mean a little different. What's with is another way of saying, what's the problem? So you see your boss a little bit angry and you tell your friend, what's with Mr. Rupert? Why is he so angry? In other words, what's the problem with your boss? But when you say, what's the deal with something, you're asking about the status of something. So maybe you are working on a project at work, okay, and you want to know the progress or how much of that project has been completed. So that's when you say, what's the deal with the presentation? What's the deal with the project? Okay, so what's with is used to talk about, what's the problem with someone, but what's the deal with is another way of asking what's the status or what's the progress about a certain thing that you're trying to do. Okay, well, that's it from me on this lesson on expressions with what. I'm sure you will be able to use these expressions almost every single day. Well, I'll be back with some more lessons. Until then, this is me saying